Welcome back. In this lesson, we will learn the basics of working with step functions. We will sign in to the step functions console where we are going to create a state machine that uses two path states. Before we create the state machine, which is a graphical representation of our workflow that you can use to examine the individual steps that define it, we will learn how does the state machine structure looks like and what are the common state fields. State machines are defined using JSON text files that represent a structure containing the following field. The command, this is an optional field and it is a human readable description of the state machine. The start at field, this field is required and it is a string that must exactly match. It is also case sensitive. It should exactly match the name of one of the state objects. Then we have the timeout seconds. This is an optional field and this is about the maximum number of seconds that an execution of the state machine can run. If it runs more than this or longer than the specified time, the execution fails with a state.timeout error name. Then we have the version field. This is also optional field, the version of the Amazon states language used in the state machine, and the default value is 1.0. Finally, we have the states field. The state field is a required field and it is the object that containing also a comma delimited set of states. So you can create an object separated by commas and this object composed of the set of states. The state field contains states. A state machine is defined by the states that it contains and the relationship between them. So the following is an example. When an execution of this state machine is started, the system begins with the state references in the start at field. In this case, the hello world. If this state has an end, a true field, that means we have set the variable end to be true and the execution would stop and returns a result. Otherwise, the system looks for the next field and the next field then it continues with that state next. So the next field contains the name of the next state. This process repeats until the system reaches a terminal state. So the terminal state is the state that has the type succeed or the type fail or the type end is true or a runtime error would occur. The following rules apply to states within a state machine. The state or states can occur in any order within the enclosing block, but the order in which they are listed doesn't affect the order in which they are run. The contents of the state determine this order. Within a state machine, there can be only one state that is designated as the start state, designated by the value of the start at field in the top level structure. This state is the one that is executed first when the execution starts. Any state for which the end field is true, that state is considered an end state or a terminal state. Depending on your state machine logic, for example, if your state machine has multiple branching of execution, you might have more than one end state in that case. If your state machine consists of only one state, it can be both the start state and the end state. In our example, we have seen three state fields, the type, result, and end. The type and the end fields are two of the common fields. And the most six common fields are the type, and this is a required field, and it is the only one required. However, it must either exist or come with a next or an end field. The next field is the name of the next state that is run when the current state finishes. Some state types, such as choice, allow multiple transition states. The end state designates the state as a terminal state. The end field designates the state as a terminal state, and it would end the execution if it is set to true. Then there can be any number of terminal states per state machine. Only one of next or end can be used in a state. Some state types, such as choice, do not support or do not use the end field. The next field is the command. This is an optional field. It holds a human readable description of the state. And then we have the input path and the output path. They are both optional as well, and these contain the path that selects a portion of the state's input or output to be passed to the state's task. And the input would be passed to the state's task for processing, and if the input is omitted, it has the value $, which designates the entire input. But the output, if omitted, the output would be passed to the next state. If it is omitted, it has also the value $, which designates the entire output. I hope we will learn more about input and output processing in the future lesson. For now, let's create our state machine. We can sign into the AWS Step Functions console, and from the main menu to the left we open state machines, then click on create state machine. This will open the first step in creating the state machine. This is the choose authoring method. As you can see, we can either design the workflow visually, or we can write the workflow in code or run a sample project. Let's design our workflow visually. Under type, we will choose standard. And as we already explained, Step Functions has two workflow types, standard and express. These workflows determine how Step Functions performs tasks, how it integrates with AWS services, and how it manages pricing. After you create a state machine, you cannot change the workflow type. Now, for a side-by-side comparison of both workflows, you can go to under type. There is the help me decide. Click on it. We can quickly look there into the table and help me decide. Most of the comparisons here are we already have seen in chapter 1, in lesson 1, when we learned about the specifications of standard and express workflows. What we didn't cover in is the pricing detail. In standard workflow, each time a step is completed, we will have one state transition, and we will be charged $0.4025 for that transition. That means $25 per 1 million state transition. While in express workflows, we are charged for the number of executions and their durations and their memory consumption. We are charged $1 per million execution and 0.504 to $0.401 per gigabyte second for duration. So it's very little money. There is also a link, learn more. There you can view more information on the pricing. For now, let's click next. We will see the Workflow Studio. Workflow Studio is a visual editor that allows us to drag, drop, and configure our workflow. The workflow definition is already generated automatically for us. We will learn more on Workflow Studios in a future lessons. Now select the Flow panel to the left as labeled in number 1, and then drag a pass state to the empty state labeled drag first state here, and we see it in the pass state 2 in red. You drag it to number 3 in the screenshot. Now give this step a name and let's call it hello. Create a new pass step or a new state and give it a name world, but first drag the pass state from the flow panel to the workflow as shown as number 2. Number 3, rename the state and let's give it a name world. Let's also edit the comment field of our state machine. Click on the start node and to the right mark by number 2 in red, I added a description for my state machine. Click on definition to review the workflow of the state machine. Note the JSON text to the right of the screen. Observe that the comment we have just edited, and note the selected state is also selected in the JSON file. Now do not forget to save the workflow that you are working on. Save it from time to time to avoid losing it if the session is disconnected. You can export the definition as a JSON file locally into your local machine. When you see the red button, workflow not saved, then click on it and choose export definition. When you are done, click on next near the top right corner of the page. Now we choose next. Again, you can see the Amazon State Language Workflow definition. Click next and you will be taken to step number 4 in the state machine creation process. This step is to specify the state machine setting. The first setting is the name. We name our state machine Hello World. Now in the permissions section, we keep the default selection. Create a new role. When you create a state machine, you select an IAM role that defines which resources the state machine has permission to access during its execution. Create a new role. This would select. You can select this option when you want Step Functions to create a new IAM role for you based on the definition of your state machine and its configuration detail. Choose an existing role. We select this option if we previously had created an IAM role for Step Functions and our state machine has the correct permission. Enter a role ARN. We select this option if we know that the ARN details or if we know the ARN details for the IAM role that we want to use for Step Function. Let's not worry about the login, tracing, and tags for now and scroll down to the bottom of the page. Note an execution role will be created with full permission, and a new execution role is named Step Functions Hello World role 9B 9D 1551 will be created. All required permissions for the actions specified in our state machine will be auto-generated. We can click on Review Auto-Generated Permissions, and if all looks good, then click on Create State Machine, the orange button shown under number 2 in the screenshot. Congratulations, you have created your first state machine. So, in this lesson, we have created a state machine using Step Function. We have learned about the state machine structure and how it looks like in its JSON file. Then we learned about the most common states and we had fun creating a state machine with 2 states of type pass. Now join me at the next lesson to learn how to start a new execution and to review the execution details.